Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of True Crime Jesus. This episode, we will be examining the body disposal method chosen by Bridge Guy to see if this can tell us anything new about him. Recently, a first responder to the Delphi murder crime scene, David Erskine, confirmed that a series of text messages related to finding the girls' bodies were indeed true. These text messages made the following assertions. Coroner's report stated that the murders were over by 3:30 p.m. and there were no signs of rape. Abby was placed on the ground like a doll. Her hood was up, arms folded across her chest. She was wearing the same clothing as the picture of her on the bridge. It appeared that Libby would fought like hell. Libby's head was an inch away from being completely taken off. They knew what they were doing with Abby. Abby was stabbed in the heart and the carotid artery of her neck. Libby was nude. Her top half was covered in leaves and sticks, almost like they were trying to cover her. As disturbing as these realizations are, they can tell us a great deal about Bridge Guy. The first thing this confirms is that a knife or some sort of cutting instrument was present. We know this because Libby was partially decapitated and Abby was stabbed in the heart and carotid artery. These types of injuries couldn't be caused by bare hands or a blunt object. The goal of this video is to use the information from the different body disposal methods discussed in the book, Serial Murder: Pathways for Investigation, to highlight potential offender characteristics we may have never considered about Bridge Guy until now. This book is written by the Behavioral Analysis Unit and the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime. The body disposal site is the only crime scene law enforcement professionals have to do their investigation. The manner and circumstances of the body disposal can lead to logical conclusions concerning the nature of the crime. Different body disposal methods reflect varied criminal experience by the offender. The manner of body disposal may show a potential relationship between the offender and victim. The categories utilized for body disposal by offenders are A. Bodies were transported from the murder scene, or B. Bodies were left at the murder scene. These two categories are then further categorized as either dumped or concealed. Dumped is defined as the body being left with no apparent concern whether it is found or not. Dumped bodies are usually left in public places. Concealed is defined as the offender hiding or concealing the victim's body to delay discovery, or to use time and natural elements to destroy physical evidence. Bodies are either 1. Transported and concealed. Abby and Libby were murdered in one location, and then their bodies transported to a different, more secluded location. Option 2. Transported and dumped. Serial killer Robert Ben Rhodes would drive his transport truck around the U.S. picking up victims. Some were murdered in his truck and then literally dumped on the side of the road where he felt it was safe. Option 3. Non-transported and concealed. An example of this would be John Wayne Gacy burying his victims under his home, or the UK's Dennis Nielsen flushing his victims down his toilet one small piece at a time until the pipes got clogged with human flesh and a plumber needed to be called. Option 4. Non-transported and dumped. Serial killers such as Dennis Rader and Joseph James DeAngelo would leave the victims in the same place they murdered them. Abby and Libby were attacked in one location, and then their bodies transported to a different, more secluded location to delay the finding of their bodies. Libby was then further concealed with sticks and branches covering her. We know this because Libby's shoe was found on a driveway far from where they were discovered. There were also pieces of her clothing found in the river, heading towards where they were found. I don't think it's very probable that Abby and Libby willingly laid down on the ground where they were found, beside each other, and let Bridge Guy murder them. It's far more likely they were murdered somewhere on the banks of Deer Creek, and then they were transported to the location they were discovered. This is when Abby was posed. Posing could be one of the signatures Robert Ives alluded to in the Down the Hill podcast. Signatures are fantasy-driven behaviors that are unnecessary to commit the crime, but are psychologically significant to the offender. Posing of the bodies was not necessary to commit the crime. This would make it one of Bridge Guy's signatures. According to a study of 480 cases of serial murder in the United States, involving 92 offenders spanning the years from 1960 to 2006. Offenders that chose to transport and conceal their victims in the same way Bridge Guy did also displayed the following characteristics. 100% of these offenders were white. 100% had a criminal history. 100% were between the ages of 24 to 43. 100% of the victims were female. The majority of their victims were white. 90% of these offenders had a full-time job at the time of the murders. 40% of these offenders had a diagnosed psychiatric disorder prior to the murders. Over half had an education beyond high school. The offender was a stranger to the victims 61% of the time. The majority of these offenders used a ruse or a con approach to gain access to the victim. In 100% of these cases, the motivation was sexual. However, DNA was infrequently found. Sound familiar? The offender was familiar with the contact site more than 80% of the time. In over 40% of these cases, bindings were used. According to David Erskine's text messages, bindings were not present, but that doesn't mean bindings or handcuffs weren't taken with the offender. The majority of the disposal sites were public areas that the offender drove himself to. That's all the time we have this week, dear friends. Thank you again for watching. I appreciate all the thoughtful comments. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you like this video, hit the like button. Next episode, I will be comparing the Delphi and Evansdale murders and discussing the 10 most striking similarities between the two. It will be a much more in-depth analysis of my serial killer theory part 1 video that I released many months ago. I will be able to include much more information that I could not before, as well as answering your many questions that I was never able to address previously. Until next time, dear friends, this is True Crime Jesus signing off.